The people of America demanded war over the tyranny of Spain and what they were doing to Cuba. Because Cuba was a very big trading partner, the people of America desperately wanted them free. Now, let's see what William McKinley had to say about this event.
President McKinley, the people are demanding war against Spain for what they've done to the USS Maine.
Thanks for notifying me, Bruda. Can you tell me what Spain done to us?
The USS Maine was a United States Navy ship which sank in Havana Harbor in February of 1898 and directly contributed to the outbreak of the Spanish-American War in the following April. American newspapers engaged in active yellow journalism to help boost their circulation of this news, and they also claimed that the Spanish were the sole perpetrators of the ship's destruction.
Certainly, Mr. President. Spain is currently in control of Cuba, and they're treating them terribly. Cuba has launched 3 rebellions, the first being the 10 Years' War in 1868, in an attempt to overthrow the Spanish rulers and attain their freedom. The next one was in 1879, when they mounted a second rebellion, dubbed the Little War, which is unsuccessful like its predecessor. And just recently, in 1894, they had led a third rebellion, that time with great leaders such as Jose Marti. However, Spain used such great force to put down the resurrection, and with the use of concentration camps to boot.
I now know what must be done and what I need to do. Time to get to work.
The next day.
Mr. President, I thought you said you were going to get to work. Why are you sitting around like a potato?
Calm down, bro. I've got it all under control. Besides, I need the sweet release of liquor to stimulate my senses.
You can't rush genius, fool.
I'm very sorry, sir. I'll leave right away.
Alright, I think it's time to get off my binge. Drinking 17 hours straight isn't an easy task. Let's get to work. Remember the Maine? To hell with Spain.
Throughout the Spanish-American War, the U.S. won many battles. One of these battles was the Battle of San Juan. As the United States began to win more and more of these battles, more land was freed by the losing side, giving the U.S. a great advantage and the Americans a boost in morale. The continued victories in large battles made generals and colonels like Theodore Roosevelt war heroes once they returned and laid the foundation for their career.
Wow, guys, that liquor last year really gave me the big brain plays. Now that Cuba is ours, we've seen so much growth in our nation. For instance, one big game I could clearly predict from the start was our economy getting the boost that it needed. Since Cuba became a territory of the U.S., it also helped Cuba because we have the largest stake in their sugar exports. With their sugar, we allowed tariffs to be lowered in exchange for a 20 to 40% tariff reduction of our products to them. This made trade boom and allowed our economy to prosper.
You know what? I'm just going to take a wild guess here, but I'm predicting that this war will help Colonel Roosevelt rise to glory. He will come back as a war hero, and his name will be remembered throughout America. And it will help him when he eventually becomes president. Without this war and without imperialism, he will never become president, and he will never be able to establish increasingly progressive ideals that will drive the antitrust policies and will bring tremendous reform to this nation.
Bro, what?
Or maybe not, I don't know, I'm just like guessing here.
Okay, that was a weird thing to predict. We might have to get rid of it. Opioid mixture or something. I don't even know why the cabinet is making me say it. But moving on, I believe that imperialism should continue and that we should start seeking outwards to new territories to conquer. The gains that we will see will be abundant, and we will be fools not to do so. I propose a future of endless imperialism, and soon the world will be our oyster. Who wants to join forces with me?
Supporters of American imperialism look to the improvements in place that have been released from Spanish rule, like the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. For example, the Philippines were released from Spain's grasp and were able to form their own governing body, Puerto Rico, which was no longer losing its resources to a foreign country. And Cuba had both of these effects combined, which made it a valuable trading partner for America. Anti-imperialism came after the Spanish-American War as people slowly started to realize the United States' true intentions. Anti-imperialists stayed true to their beliefs in self-governance and non-intervention, formally expressed by George Washington in his farewell address, as well as Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address. The main driver of this belief started with the American Anti-Imperialist League, founded in June of 1898. Mark Twain was a prominent member of this league who voiced his opinion on the Philippines.
That speech made by President McKinley is complete and utter rubbish. I can't believe people want to take over places and ruin what culture society has already existed before us. I say they are maniacs.
Mark Twain wrote To the Person Staying in Darkness in 1901, and it was one of the most influential anti-imperialist pieces of literature. It was a satirical piece about the brutalities of Western imperialism and attacks it by taunting those he considered to be the leaders of imperialism, and that they basically destroyed the whole world. Twain lampooned missionary morality and likened it to questionable American activities in the Philippines. This essay had a very, very dark tone, and includes imperialism as shown in the Boxer Uprising and the Boxer War in China.
Alright, let's get this crap done. My realization from this ordeal is that there is no salvation for us but to adopt civilization and lift ourselves down to its level. If we go on imperializing many more territories, then it will be the end of humanity and all of its glorious, diverse cultures and religions. What do you think about this? must assuredly assume so. This is big brain time. You are right. Imperialism would most definitely damage our economics because of the money it would take to fund our military. It's also definitely not moral because everyone should have the chance to be independent. Territories who can't fend for themselves against our might is just not right.
Croissant.
What a great idea. We could get many more people to join our cause and help our arguments. We get people such as Andrew Carnegie, William James, and George S. Boutwell. Wait, wasn't he the former Secretary of State? If we could get someone like that on our side, that would be phenomenal to our cause. We could form an anti-imperial league and fight against future annexations of other territories. The Philippines look really vulnerable right now, and that could be our main focus because they could be defeated in 1902.
Eat all my beans!
Oh, you assume my hesitance? Screw you! I don't need you! To everyone else, the reason why I spontaneously changed my decision from supporting imperialism to opposing it was because I read the Treaty of Paris more thoroughly one day, and I realized that we were never meant to free and enlighten the new territories. I realized that we were there to conquer them. Oh, I'm getting so stressed and mad. I need some of that sugar. Oh, look at that. My mind is finally clear. Oh, I am opposed to having the eagle put its talons on any other land.
Mark, it is I, Jesus Jeebus III. Mark, it is very unfortunate, for I have to bring this news to you.
Wait, what news?
The stuffed animals you have been talking to for the last 18 days
Huh?
have told me something.
What'd they tell you?
The demented Pikachu told me you look like a wet napkin.
Say to me, you little...
In the Spanish-American War, America's main goal regarding their pursuits in Cuba was to acquire new materials and resources to implement in their market. However, there was a huge build-up to the war itself. The Austin Manifesto of 1854 was the first sign of interest in Cuba. Then, 1 or 2 years before the war, Spain forced their hand upon an insurrection by the Cubans with the aid of Spanish General Weyler, forcing almost 300,000 Cubans into concentration camps, where many of them died. America, being very closely related to Cuba at the time, was left with newfound anger towards Spain. After the Spanish-American War, Americans were strongly convinced that Cubans could not govern themselves after experiencing such debilitating losses. The Platt Amendment of 1901 was then used to allow the U.S. to basically completely control Cuban trade and government. The U.S. then used Cuba's resources for economic purposes by infiltrating and dominating the various industries, imports, and exports. However, many Cubans couldn't support themselves. This image, taken in 1898 after the war, clearly shows American disregard for the Cubans and highlights the trend of imperialism for economic gain. The Platt Amendment, being passed over the Teller Amendment, which opposed intervention in Cuba, also shows the true unreliability of American treaties at the time. This cartoon, made in 1896, details Uncle Sam's unstoppable encroachment into Cuban territory. The bottom caption translates to "Guarding the island so that it is not lost," which was basically an obvious excuse to hide America's true intentions of greediness and predatory endeavors. America only saw a Cuban takeover in order to drain them of their resources, with no moral regard for the people of the land like the American people have falsely stated.
Welcome to Answer or Die, where if you answer, you die. Now introducing our two contestants. First, the American Anti-Imperialism League against the McKinley Pro-Imperialists. Now, our first question goes to Ailes. Now answer or die. Okay, you must say your answer in 3 seconds. Now our first question is, why did the U.S. liberate Cuba? Sorry, time's up. The answer we were looking for was to recover our trading partnership with Cuba while also freeing them from oppression from Spain. That's -1 point for Ailes. Now you will die.
What?
Our next question for the imperialists is, name a positive effect of imperialism.
U.S. economy?
Big boost! Good job, you got the gist of it. The U.S. had a huge economic boost from new territories boasting abundances of natural resources, and trading profits increased immensely. Since you answered, you should die, but I'll let you live. Our next question is for Ailes, and at the current rate, they might as well lose the rest of the competing members. So our next question is, was Cuba better or worse after the Spanish-American War?
Worse.
Correct! I'm sorry, but you are wrong. The U.S. definitely didn't do anything wrong, and we could never put Cuba in such a horrible condition and in poverty because, we definitely didn't neglect them after the war. We only, fulfilled our responsibility according to the white man's burden because of British imperialism. Now, you will die. That is another point lost for the American Anti-Imperialist League. Now, if my PhD in mathematics will finally be of use, I have calculated that the American Anti-Imperialist League has lost to McKinley's pro-imperialism with a score of -2 to 1. As you clearly see, the US imperialized and eventually gained Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and other smaller island nations. Thank you for your support. This message is sponsored by PBS Kids.
Imperialism in the United States could best be compared to imperialism from Great Britain, which occurred on a much larger scale with occupations of multiple countries that became provinces. The United States occupied Cuba, the Philippines, and American Samoa in 1898 and 1899. Meanwhile, Britain's territorial expansion was rampant, having claims to Canada, the Indian subcontinent, Australia, and New Zealand, to name a few. In fact, Britain's empirical conquest was the largest in the history of the world, with almost 20% of the world's population and 22% of the Earth's landmass in its grasp by its peak in 1938. In contrast, America's conquests were minuscule, only going so far as the Philippines right next to Asia. Britain, having immense maritime expansions as well as a booming industry somewhat akin to that of the United States, was able to use their rapid modernization in Europe to their advantage, conquering third world countries with ease. The United States had imperialist sentiments when they gained the Louisiana Territory, as well as a brief period in the Spanish-American War, and a few more times in the future, including the acquisition of Hawaii. This stark contrast in the desire for more land between the two countries is the reason that Britain's empire far greater than success in the United States did imperialism.
2 plus 2 is 4, minus 1, that's 3, quick maths. Everyday man's on the block, smoke trees. See your girl in the park, but that girl was a uckers. When the ting went quack, 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 you man were ducking. Old tight ass me, my brother.